Hello everyone. So in the last video we finished up our main function here where we returned the dictionary, and then we also did our second function, which is to print out the band and the number of best albums that they had. And so for this video we're gonna do the final function, and then we'll go over it, everything. We'll go over all the functions here. And so let's see what I don't know what the final function is. For each decade, the 40s, 50s, etc., realize a function f underscore number per decade that prints out how many best albums were produced in that decade. So then it wants us to have number per decade. Let's take the argument of a dictionary. Let's see. Let's prompt the user for for a decade. So enter a decade. And then we'll have a user decade end equal to integer of user decade plus 10, and then we'll have user decade end equal the string of itself. Alright, so 10 obvious because a decade is 10 years. Okay, so then we'll have total albums equals 0. And then let's go into our dictionary. So we're gonna go for keys in dictionary, and then for values in dictionary keys. Let me sit here. Album equals 0. Okay, so for that, let's run our checks. So if user decade is less than or equal to our values, which would be less than user decade end, then we'll increment album by 1. And then we'll go out of that for loop, and we'll have total albums incremented by album. And then we'll go out of that for loop and print I guess something like total albums, best albums in the user decade. Right. Let me see, let me comment this out. Trying to see any potential problems here. Let's see. Oh, like I always do, forget to call the function. Okay, so number per decade. Now we'll use dictionary. Enter decade. Let's do 19. I think there's only one best album for the 1950s. Right. So, alright, so let's do 70s, those were popular. Alright, 21. And 2000s, 9 best albums. Okay, so that function, it works. So, this is, we prompt user for a decade. We then create a end to that decade, which would be obviously 10 years ahead of that time. And then we turn the that decade back into a string. We then have our total albums, which obviously equals 0. We then go into our keys, and then our values, and whenever we went to the next key, album would reset to 0, and then values would increment, and then once values was done, it'll go into our total albums. And then we printed out the total albums for that. And obviously it takes one argument, which will be the dictionary that was up here. So let's go over this. So in our main function, we created an empty dictionary. We then opened and read our file. We indexed over my file, and we changed it up a little bit. We copied it onto a new file and put dashes in places of parentheses so that we could split it later. And then we split between the breaks, where in each break we split it. And then we went to into that new file, and we split it into dashes. And then we added it to a list, an empty list. We put it there. And then for that way we had the artist and the albums and the years as their own elements, and then we took those elements and put them in their own list. And then we went down here and put them into dictionaries, where we take out the place where the bands and their albums were, and then we sliced those up, and then we put them in dictionaries. And we were fortunate enough to have the band and the albums and the years correspond with each other in the same position in their own list. So the artist in position 0 was with the album in position 0, and the year in position 0, and so on and so on. And then return the dictionary, which is what we did here, where we called the function and assigned it to dictionary. And then we did our next function. Let me take this comment off, where it wants us to print the band and the number of albums they had. So that's where we went into our keys, we went to our values, and whatever value wasn't a number essentially was counted as an album. And so we had that, and we returned, or we printed out the band and then their number of albums that they had. And then I went over this one. And so let me print this all out. Full screen. Let's do 1980s. Alright, 15 best albums in the 80s. Let me see. Yeah, U2, 6, Who, 3. I'm gonna print out the dictionary here. This is what our dictionary looks like. It's really ugly, but it's the dictionary that we have, and it's correct. You guys can obviously make it look better. So we see here where Velvet Underground is with their album, Velvet Underground with their with the year, so we know that's right. And so this was a pretty tricky assignment. As you can see, we had a lot of programming to do. All in all, it was okay. Hopefully this helped. You maybe got stuck somewhere and you saw this, and you got an idea of how to get past it and stuff like that. So hope this helps, and see you next time.